shout out to all of the Gambassadors here, live and tuning in onto YouTube. We all love Gamma. We're huge fans of them. And we've got people building Gamma joining us today to talk about the Gamma API. We're going to be talking about how to use their new API with tools like Zapier. We will be walking away with a deeper understanding of how the API works, some of the use cases to streamline your own content creation and production. Amanda, great to see you today.
Hey, yeah, it's good to see you again. Yeah, so Deanie, who is our product manager that worked on the API, is going to be doing the demo.
Thank you for making the time, everyone. So excited to hear from you and also share with you one of my sort of really close to heart offerings that we just recently launched, our API. I will actually start sharing my screen and we'll talk about it together just to set a sense of what we'll go through today. I'll tell you a little about like the background of the API and the API lore, and then I'll actually walk through a live step by step of how one would set it up in, let's say, Zapier. And from there, let's keep this lively. Would love to take questions. So yeah, we'll take it away. Let me just share my screen really quickly. All right. Gamma API, connect Gamma to anything. As I mentioned, I'm Deanie. I lead our AI offering at Gamma, but I also lead our API offering, and that's why I'm here. And I wanted to talk a little bit about why we built an API. From the responses in this sort of chat, it looks like a lot of you already know Gamma and have used Gamma. And from many of our power users, we actually heard this desire to connect Gamma to all of their other tools. So actually, I'll share a little tidbit with you guys. This is Canny, a screenshot from Canny, which is a tool that we use where people can ask for different feature requests in Gamma. They can report bugs, all of that stuff. And building an API that can connect to Zapier, Make, etc., was our top three most desired things of all time. It was something that really came from our power users wanting to use Gamma in connection with all their other tools. Many users told us, listen, I'm often crafting my ideas and brainstorming in ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, and then I have to copy and paste it all over into Gamma. And why can't I just connect it directly in? And so from all of that sort of conversation, we wanted to really basically meet users where they are and build an API to enable that. But over time, we learned a bit more. Various businesses reached out to us once they heard that we have an API. And really what they told us is, look, I have a tool that gets data from CRMs or gets data from a research tool, and it synthesizes a bunch of information for different use cases, whether it's like a sales enablement or a marketing research or some other use case. And what my tool outputs is like a large amount of text, which is great because that's what the customers need, but it's not very engaging. And what it would be amazing to do is to actually use a visualization layer to make those reports and that information a lot more engaging for my end users. And so instead of going out and building what Gamma has built, we'd love to integrate with Gamma. So all of that information in my tool goes into a Gamma, and users have a much more delightful experience in the app that I'm building, which we found to be like a really interesting use case as well. So lots of businesses are reaching out to us because what Gamma built is hard to do, and instead of building it from scratch, they want to use our tool. So that's the second point here. And then the final point is more of a philosophical one. We are in this age of AI, and in the last couple of years, I think people have really grown to using AI as a tool for question answering. I have a question, I go to ChatGPT, it gives me an answer. Amazing. But we are now very much at the edge of a world where it's much more than question answering. It's about doing for me, right? And an AI will only be able to do something for you if you can give it the right tools. You need to be able to connect it to all your tools in order to achieve true automation. So I think very soon we will see a world where every app has an API. And it is a necessity because in order to, again, get AI to truly do automation and connect to different parts of your tool ecosystem, you need an API. We really want to make Gamma work better for our users, and we want to be ahead of that curve. We want to be setting that trend. And so that's why we wanted to get building that API sooner rather than later as well. That's a little bit about why we built an API. I'm going to jump straight into the demo part of it, or where we walk together and build something with an API together. But before I do that, any questions? And by the way, I can't see chat, so if there's questions in chat, somebody just let me know.
We'll do. Yeah, no
Okay,
questions right now, but yeah, everybody drop them in the chat.
cool. All right, as I mentioned, today's focus is going to be using Gamma's Generate API in Zapier, which is really the philosophical sort of foundation of why we wanted to build an API very quickly and lead that trend of automation that's empowering our users. Before I do that, I want to give you guys a secret weapon, okay? It's developers.gamma.app. This is where our developer documentation is. It has all of the details of how our API works, what can it do, what can't it do, and all the sort of nitty-gritty details about it. How do you reach out for help? Where do you ask questions? All of that's in there. And really what I like to tell people is everything I know is on there. I wrote it, trust me, everything. So if you have a question, I would say the documentation will have it. Worst case scenario, put it into ChatGPT and ask it your questions, and you're likely to get all the answers that you need from our developer documentation. We really try to put a lot of attention into it. If you have any questions, go to developers.gamma.app. And if you have further questions that the documentation doesn't answer, definitely send me feedback. That's great for me to know, and I can add more documentation around it. And we also have a Slack channel that you can ask questions in as well. Cool. Okay, awesome. With that, we'll jump straight into the demo. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually go over to Zapier, where this is literally my Zapier dashboard. I'm just going to hit create. We're going to make a Zap together. And maybe before I start, I'd love to know if there are people in the session here who are Zapier experts. Any experts in there? Okay. I can't see chat, but I'm hoping there are some people in here who are pretty good at Zapier.
Saying I'm not necessarily an expert, but I've used it before, and I find Zapier much easier to get started with than Make or N8N. So I think if anyone's not familiar with any of these tools, like I'd recommend starting with Zapier as kind of like a way to get into this world. And so it sounds like not a lot of people are experts with it just now, maybe aren't exposed to it. Also important to note that maybe Zapier might be a little more costly than some of the other tools, but it also does come with some ease of use. And would you say that what we're demonstrating here could also be applied to some of the other tools in terms of like how these workflows integrate?
Absolutely, yeah.
Okay.
I think a lot of the tools work similarly. There's a notion of public integration, and what that means is basically there's an amount of work that we have to do to set up our integration and our API into Zapier for somebody to be able to use it very seamlessly. And we've done that work with Zapier. So I would say to boost to +1 to all your points that it is an easier tool. It's a very popular tool. And we've done an additional amount of work to set up the integration to be like really easy to follow. We're working on doing similar things with other tools where you can set up the API separately in those other tools, but we're planning to make the integration even more seamless for people to be able to use, but we just haven't gotten there today. Cool. Okay, so I'm going to set up a Zap. Basically, the workflow that I'm going to show you is one that I think can apply to lots of different use cases. It's one where I get a Google Doc in my Drive, maybe it's in a specific folder, and that triggers a workflow where that content of the doc gets extracted and put into Gamma and a presentation gets made. So why this is a common workflow is, let's say I am a consultant or a salesperson or a marketing person. I'm a customer-facing person, and I have a meeting with a potential client. I meet with them, and as a follow-up, I want to send them a deck. Here's what we talked about instead of messy meeting notes. I would presumably take some notes maybe in a Google Doc. That would be a new doc in my folder. And Zapier, what it does is it just pulls that folder to see, hey, is there any new doc in here? Did Dini meet a new person? And as soon as there's a new meeting doc, it'll take that content, send it to Gamma, and you'll get a beautiful deck out. You can go even a step further and automate sending that deck that's been made to your customer and emailing them directly in Zapier. I'm not going to show that today just because of time, and also because I personally think if you're getting used to Zapier, you probably want to start with a workflow where there's some human intervention before you send off your decks. You look at it, you verify it, it looks all good, you've set up your Zapier integration appropriately, and then you've sent it off manually. But all sorts of automations are possible. Okay, cool. I'm just gonna jump right in. So what in Zapier, again, the first thing that you have to do is set up that trigger, like what triggers a workflow. And in this case, I'm gonna choose Google Docs. And then it's gonna ask you to set up your Google Doc account. Like, what do you actually want to do? So here it's Google Docs, that's the right app. The trigger event that I'm gonna choose is a new document in a folder because I don't want just any document in my drive to kick off an event. I have a particular folder where I save the documents that I care about making into gammas. So that's the trigger event that I'm gonna choose. And then it's going to tell me to log into my Google account. You can see here that I'm already logged in, but just to show you what that looks like, you could just connect a new account and that would open up your login with Google workflow there. But for me, I'm already logged in. So I'm going to just hit continue there. The next thing you have to do is say, okay, what is happening? What should we be doing for this trigger? So I'll show you what that looks like. Just waiting for a second for it to load. There we go. So here it's asking me, like, again, where it should be looking. I want it to look in my Google Drive. And it's asking me, okay, which folder did you want me to look into? So I'm going to select a folder. Here you can see I have a tests folder, so I'm going to do that. So now it knows which folder to pull for new documents. And then I'm going to hit continue again. And now it wants me to test to make sure that connection, like Zapier, can actually connect into my Google Drive. So I'm just going to say test trigger. Great. So it looks like it was able to connect to my folder. It's saying that, hey, I was able to pull in a bunch of new documents. I'm actually going to, because I have a lot of documents I'm just trying to figure out which document it's pulling. This is all for a test. So I just want to make sure that I have a good representative document for the kind of work that I want to do. Yeah. Here's the title of the document that it's pulled in. It's called The Oceans of the World. It's one of the many documents I have in that folder. That looks right to me. It's a fine test document. So I'm just going to say, yeah, continue with selected record. Cool. That Google Doc part is now set up. The next thing I want to do is take the content from the Google Doc account and put it into Gamma, right? So the next tool that I'm going to choose is Gamma right here. It's my top app because obviously I use it a lot. But for the first time users, you might just need to select Gamma. But yeah, it'll just come up if you can't see it in your top used tools. So I'm just going to hit Gamma there. So that's the right app. Now, action event. So there's two things you can do with our API. You can generate a gamma, which is always going to be the first thing you want to do. The second thing you can do is if you're not going into your dashboard or if you wanted to do that additional send email to a person, there would be a second step that you could do where that generated file, you could get a link to it using this other sort of action. But for today, we're just going to start with generate. So generate a gamma. And then again, it's asking me for an account here. So this is where you have to go. And as you've seen, I have my Gamma account set up here, but I wanted to show you guys for the first time you set it up, how you would set it up. So you would go to connect an account and it would give you a pop-up that says, put in your API key here. And I'm gonna click out of that and actually go to my Gamma account and show you where to get your API key. So if you go to settings and members in your Gamma dashboard and you go over to API keys, you'll see that I have lots of API keys here and you can create an API key from this by clicking in here and naming it Zapier test. And like creating an API key there, you must copy this and then paste it into Zapier. So I'm just going to close that. I'm going to pop back into Zapier for now, but I wanted to see, first of all, if anybody has questions about how to get an API key before I move on.
I have a question. It's not about how to get the key. I was just going to type it. This is Stacy. I actually wanted to know, since you're doing this, and I think API, I always think credits, charges. I just want to know, especially with the new way that Gamma is set up, when you're doing this, how does it affect your credits? Does it work for people who have free accounts, et cetera, et cetera? You understand where I'm going with the question?
Absolutely, yeah. Our API offering is for pro users and above. So if you have a pro account or an ultra account or a Teams and Business account, you have access to the API offering. Free users and plus users do not have access to our API offerings. That's a part of your question. The second part around credits is absolutely, we charge credits for the API. And as I mentioned, if you go to developers.gamma.app, we have a page that sort of explains how credits work. So number of cards, it's 3 credits per card. And so if you're generating 10 cards, that would be 30 credits. AI image models, if you're using a very basic model, it's 2 credits per image. But if you want like really premium stuff in there, it can be really expensive, but you have the choice to decide what you want and what from the menu you want, and then you have full transparency into how much credits you're going to get charged. Does that answer your question?
It does. I'm sorry I couldn't get to unmute, but yes, it does. Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Cool. All right, coming back to here. So as I showed you, so you would set up your account with an API key from your dashboard. I have mine already set up. Gamma Dini, great. I'm going to hit continue. And now, for those of you who are very familiar with Gamma, this is going to look really familiar. So here you have a bunch of different fields, but all of these fields, although they look different, are going to map in your mind to all the stuff that you are actually used to seeing in Gamma. So like in format, you have presentation, document, social, right? This should sound familiar. Theme names, right? You get to pick a theme. So you can type in. And we have little, yeah, I think what's showing up here is little helper text. In case you're like not entirely sure where to find this or what this means, we have little helper text for each field. So night sky, or if you have a custom theme that you've created, just put the name in and it'll map to the theme that you've created. Number of cards. So we're gonna actually go step by step through each of these, but this should look hopefully really familiar. So yeah, so input text is essentially what you want the Gamma, like the text that you're pasting into Gamma usually. So here, I'm actually going to click this plus icon, and what it's showing me is all the things that are available from the document information that it just pulled in, that we just set up with Google Docs. So what I actually want going into my Gamma is not just the title, it's not the ID, it's not like none of this is important. What I want is the raw plain text content. This is all of the content that's in the document. So that's what I'm going to click. Oh, I clicked it twice. There we go. So input text is really like what I'm doing is telling Zapier that I want all that content from the Google Doc that you pulled in as the input text into my file, into my Gamma. And then you can choose generate, condense, preserve. Again, familiar options from Gamma. Generate takes what you've given Gamma, and then Gamma then generates even more content around it to supplement what you already have. Condense, if you have 20 pages of text and you really need to squeeze it into 2 pages, it'll help you summarize. And preserve is I have this text and I really want to keep it the way it is, and that's what preserve does. I'm going to keep it to generate for now, but yeah, you can do any of those. Those should work. For the format, as I mentioned, presentation, document, socials, I'm just going to keep it to presentation. The other thing that I should mention actually as I'm going through this is you see little red asterisk here. The only required thing that you have to fill in is the input. Like, what do you want the input to be? Everything else is not required. And why that is because we wanted to make it really easy for people to get started. So if you're not really sure the number of cards or the presentation or what theme you want, we've set smart defaults for each of these. So I could technically, without just choosing anything here, just hit continue and I would get a Gamma. Feel free to play around with them, but they all have default values that we've tried to set that make sense. And all of that's, by the way, documented in our developer documentation as well. So feel free to take a look on what the default values are, but you can also set the values that you like best. So instead of 10, if you wanted 20, you could do that. And then additional instructions, if you had any, export as. So if you wanted to also export directly to PDF or PPTX, you could do that. And then text amount, tone, right? Tone, I'm going to leave tone blank, but actually what I like to do is I'm going to say make each title catchy just to make sure it really follows. Actually, make each title rhyme. Let's see if it does that well. And then output language is English. Image sources are AI. I want AI images, so let's do that. The image model you get to define, and again, maps to what plan you're on. So if you're on Pro, you'll have access to all the Pro models. If you're on Ultra, you'll have access to the Ultra models. And for a list of how to say it, for example, if I wanted ideogram turbo, I can't really type in ideogram turbo this way. This is going to error. You have to go to developer documentation. And we actually have image model accepted values. So if you're looking for ideogram turbo, this is what you have to type in. It's a little bit hyphenated this way. You can, where was I? Here.
Can I ask a quick question about that?
Yeah.
What's the issue that you can't have a drop down there so that it just grabs something already preset? Because that's a little bit of a big workaround, especially for people who are not comfortable with these kinds of things. I'm fine.
Yeah. That's such a good question. The answer is going to be very unsatisfying. We just haven't gotten to it yet. It's totally on our list. So both for themes and for image models, we want to enable this drop-down behavior where you're able to select. So we're working on it, but for now, this is our workaround. The other thing we've noticed is that a lot of users have their favorite image models. And so once they do this one-time setup where oh, this is my favorite image model, I'm going to use this again and again, they often don't need to go back and redo it. So that's the other reason why we haven't yet gotten to it, but it's very valid feedback and we're working on it. Cool. You can also set image style if you want to like type something in that's very particular. I want them to be black and white or whatever. What did I end up setting as my theme? I didn't set a theme. I really like the night sky theme, so we're gonna go with that. And my image style, let's make them. Actually, I want my image style to be reflective of night sky, so I'm going to leave it. But if anybody has any ideas, let me know, and I'm happy to test it out live. Card dimensions, I'm just going to choose fluid, the regular sort of default, and workspace access and external access are ways for you to just determine who gets to see this gamma in your workspace. So workspace access, you know what, I'm going to give everybody full access. And external access, I actually don't want to give anybody any access. So again, if you don't set those values, we've tried to set smart defaults for you where external access and workspace access will default to the workspace settings that you have in your Gamma dashboard and Gamma account already. Cool. I'm going to pause here. I went through a lot of different fields. Any questions before I hit continue? All
I have a
right.
question
Yeah.
about one of the newer things that also came out with templates in Gamma that you can set up. Does this also work with predefined templates where
Today we don't.
okay.
We are working on, so templates just came out in the app, and now we're working on building that into our API offering as well. So it's totally on our radar. A lot of people actually want to use templates and API together. They go hand in hand.
Cool.
Awesome. All right, I'm going to test step. All right, it gave me a generation ID, which is really good news because that means it went into Gamma's return. It's its way of acknowledging that, hey, we've got your request, we're working on it, and here's an ID of your generation. There's not much more I'm going to do with this, but I'm just going to cross out here. And what's going to happen is I'm going to go back to my dashboard. Here we go, gammas. And when the gamma finishes generating, it will appear in my dashboard. So I'm going to let it generate for a minute or two. And in the meantime, I'm going to go over to our developer documentation, just to walk you guys over it as we're waiting on that. A couple of things about the developer documentation. As I mentioned, it's intended to be like really clear. If you had no way to get in touch with anybody at Gamma, but you still wanted to use our API, it's written with that use case in mind. A person should be able to especially a developer, should be able to read it and use sort of our API really well. And here I think some of these may not be relevant because maybe some of you aren't necessarily coding or using our API directly in your backend code. But what should be helpful is in this tab, understand how our API parameters work. If you look at the different field names here, you'll recognize those are the ones that we just went over in Gamma, in Zapier. And so here you'll be able to read about things like, oh, character limits, or, oh, this is how I add card splits in Zapier for if I have an opinion about where I want the card splits to happen. And we try to give you examples of each of these as well. You'll also see things like, let's see, like num cards for pro users. This is the number of cards you can use, and ultra users, this is the number of cards you can use. So all those limitations and capabilities are highlighted in this documentation in a lot of detail. Cool. I'm going to go back here. I'm going to refresh, see if our thing was done. Yeah, it's here. And you can see here, it has a little API logo on it. And I'll zoom in a little bit. And it looks like, yeah, Blue Planet's watery domain. I did have it about the ocean. So I'm going to click into it. Okay. So yeah, here it is. It's generated all these slides. So that's a little about the API. Any other questions or anything that's coming up for you guys? And we can talk about different use cases and brainstorm some of that as well.
Yeah, just one question, Dini. I get the whole use of the developers guide. What I was just thinking, funny enough, when I looked at it, I get why code looks like code because it's code. However, I'm like, why don't they do a gamma to make that whole thing just look a little better, be a little more readable, or use another tool that I actually would love to see you guys integrated with, although you do similar things, Napkin AI. When you guys came out with all the new smart charts, that's not what they're called. I don't know why I can't think of the name of it. Those are great and they're similar, but there's some differences in how it works. So I'm just saying it would be nice if you guys did something a little more visually appealing to make it easier to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what we're realizing is that when we first started working on the API, an API is a technical product. And so we had assumed a lot of the people who'd want to use our API would also be maybe more of the like sort of coding people who are comfortable with coding. But we're really lucky because we're realizing a lot of people want to use our API, not just people who can code, but people also who are non-technical and who aren't coding. And the great news is we live in an era where no code tools are also becoming so easy to use and empowering people. So where I totally hear you, our initial offering and documentation is very technical leaning, and we're working on ways to make it a lot more friendly to use in no code tools and for people who don't code as well. Any other questions I can answer?
Not a question necessarily, but with all the ideas that I'm sure you guys are getting so much feedback across the board with the latest updates you've made, is a lot of the stuff got released a week ago from like now. I know you guys have a lot on your plate with continuing to develop this, and there's some places that I know people can also submit ideas and feedback on the Gamma site as you have ideas for that. And so I would just encourage anyone that is using Gamma that does have ideas how to make this tool better to also submit it inside of the community so they get that feedback filtered there. Obviously, these are great to bring up on the summit as well. But just for anyone that's watching this also on YouTube, this is a very new feature. And so there are certainly going to be bugs and stuff that in ways that it's going to improve even over the next few weeks, I'm sure. Yeah, any other questions here live, guys? This is your time to do it. I know one of the use cases that I'm looking at Dina is around like sales presentation automation. Prospect responds to an email, says that, oh yeah, I'd love a custom presentation that you're offering to make for me. And then we're going to be taking their website, scanning their website, and running it through a workflow that at the end of the workflow is creating a Gamma presentation. And that is something I'm sure you can do, and we're looking at doing inside of Zapier. But like any other use cases like that you're seeing like more commonly that might give people some ideas about what they could do
Yeah,
with.
the one that you mentioned is great. The one that I mentioned earlier in the call is again meeting notes to Gamma as a follow-up, and almost like here's a follow-up, like automated direct, and you where you even send it to the client automatically so that it's sent also in a timely manner. Actually, folks at Gamma use this automation themselves, where if we're meeting with customers, our customer success manager, Megan, she'll meet with people, send her meeting notes. So she'll take meeting notes in like Fireflies or Granola, like one of the meeting note taking tools, or like even a Zoom recording and get the transcript of it and feed that into Gamma, create a follow-up document and send that over. And in addition to that, I think people just generating a lot of one user reached out saying that she has a workflow where she has lesson plans that she comes up with or like educational material, but she needs to come up with multiple variants of the same material for students with different learning abilities. And so she's
Mm.
able to automate that and parallelize that, which I think is like super cool and so powerful. That's one that's come up. Yeah, and just as I was mentioning, a lot of people who live in dense data, where I have to take information from a deep research tool, marry that with like customer resource management tool, marry all of that together, send that through a large language model like Claude or ChatGPT to be like, hey, here's like the context, here's the thing that I'm doing deep research on, and here's like a bunch of other things that are important to contextualize what I'm trying to do, marry it together, come up with a presentation because I need to do this like meeting or this talk. So that like the LLM will then marry all that information together, create a slide deck, and then they'll send it directly into Gamma as well. So just seeing lots of interesting things there. One user also mentioned to me that he spends a lot of time generating new ideas for new businesses. And so I don't know if he did this, but one of his ideas was coming up with new business ideas, creating pitch decks for each of those, and then again, like automating, sending it to a bunch of different investors all at the same time. So at any given time, he has like several investors looking at several of his ideas, which I think is a very interesting way to grow his business.
That's great. And I see another comment here about a lot of the focus being on the business side and sales side, but the education is also a huge aspect of Gamma. A lot of educators use Gamma for what you even mentioned, creating different curriculums or different slides for different people because everyone learns differently. I just want to highlight one that one of our own educators, Kelly Tenney, shared at the last summit with Gamma was not only using it to create like slide deck that presented a curriculum, but then using Gamma to create individualized worksheets and like smaller like offshoots of content and stuff that was complementary to maybe a larger course as a whole. And I could see how this could also be really helpful in that sort of regard for creating additional assets to support people that learn and consume information just in different ways that Gamma can help so much on the visual side. I do see
Totally.
a hand raised here. We have a few questions coming through in the comments, so I just want to quickly work through some of these, and then Stacy will jump to you. We see a comment from Dennis. I'm working on a scaling a B2B sales enablement platform at the scale of potentially hundreds of thousands of presentations made per month. I'm curious what you can disclose about scalability of this API, things like purchasing credits or enterprise plans for high volumes of presentations made via API calls.
Oh, I'm so glad someone asked. One of the things that we're working on, like very right now, is increasing the amount of like API calls you can make. So again, as Darby, as you mentioned, like this is a very new product. We started off slow. We have an API offering, but it's pretty capped. Right now, it's capped at 50 generations a day. But as the person asking the question mentioned, that to really use it at scale, that's not enough. A lot of people want to make a lot more. And so one thing that we're working on right now is actually increasing the flexibility of usage and allowing people to use a lot more and as much as they want. If you want to use the API to create one generation a day, that's up to you. And if you want to create 1,000 a day, that's also up to you. And the way we increase that flexibility is through credits because it gives you the right to determine how much you want to use this and how much value you're getting out of this tool. One of the things that we're working on, as I mentioned, is increasing sort of taking the caps off, so use as much as you want, and then implementing the ability to charge credits and also refill credits. So if you want to refill credits based on how much you're using it, you can do auto refills hopefully soon as well. So you don't have to think about it and you can just set it and forget it. And if that's what works for you, that's what works for you. So just like enabling users in their different workflows. So that should help with scalability.
That's great. Stacy, if you want to come off the mic.
Yeah, I got a couple things, but they're very just small, I think. So first of all, my pet peeve with AI is the output and the organization. It's been since day one. I was so excited when ChatGPT came out with projects. So that's a start in the right direction, right? And canvases, so you can sort things. But I can see how this gives a great opportunity, but it could be costly to move things over and then create them into visual documents. I'm neurospicy, and that means that I like things visual and I like to see things a certain way. So that's just a statement. So another thing that came to my mind, Darby, is actually the way you use Pickaxe Studio. I hope I'm saying that right. Pickaxe, right? Studio today, like you literally, I'm assuming you can embed this even in Pickaxe so that people who are using your tool behind your gate, you actually can have this also embedded in addition to a GPT in the way that you set it up. If after they find things and learn things from your GPT tool, they could actually create visualizations, again, using some of your, getting the content from your GPT with your voice and your thought leadership, and then using it immediately to create presentations, et cetera, and documents right there in it. Just a thought, just came to my mind. I don't know if you're getting what I'm saying, Darby. You don't look like you're getting what I'm saying.
Can you clarify how you're envisioning those two tools paired together? Because my head's going in two different directions right now.
Okay, so I'm saying if this is a tool that I'm coming to, because even myself as a thought leader, I have something set up as a Pickaxe Studio, as I understood what you taught us earlier, then they're coming to use my GPT and learn from me and utilize it and stuff for their business with my voice behind it and my thought process or my knowledge base in there, right? So now, if I also could find a way to embed access to this API so that I have it already set up in a way that follows my thought leadership, but they're going to now use it using my information, just a value add to whatever you're charging. You're going to charge them for the studio, keeping it in one place. It's like a white label, right? It's like your own brand of something. So they're going through you, not going directly to all these different tools. I have clients whom it's too much to go to all these different tools. All right, I'll leave that one there. Just something to think about.
I'll maybe just do a quick piggyback on that before we move on to the next hand raise is, and correct me if I'm off base with here, but you're saying you create content in Pickaxe in that case, but it could be an AI large language model, but giving people the ability to then create a gamma from that content is what you're saying. Maybe.
But within the studio, if you can do it, if I understand how the studio works,
Yeah,
maybe
so
I don't understand that.
This is a great technical question because tools like Pickaxe, like we were demonstrating earlier today, have the ability now to create your own MCP servers and API like calls within them, which like I don't know how I would do it if I were to go and try and build it right now, but it seems like there could be a world where we could create like some sort of MCP plugin or just a Zapier MCP that then communicates with Gamma that you say, now create a presentation for me. And then it goes and does the thing with Gamma, which seems possible. Correct me if I'm wrong, Deanie.
Totally. I think to be fully honest, I'm not very familiar with Pickaxe, but I am very familiar with MCP. And if it's a tool that allows sort of MCP connections, part of what we're working on is an MCP server as well. That so you can any tool that accepts MCP service, or for example, Claude Desktop, which if you're in Claude and you're already chatting with Claude and you just want to tell Claude to go and build a Gamma presentation, you will have a way to connect the Gamma API directly to your Claude desktop. So you don't even have to go into Zapier. You can just tell Claude, okay, great, here's my outline. Now go create a
That's
presentation.
great. I think that's what we're getting at here, Stacy, is that ability is coming and could probably be done now in some form, but I think we're going to see that easier and easier to start to communicate with Gamma inside of the tools that we already naturally work with to eliminate some of the jumping back and forth. Thank you for the idea and the question. John, you want to come on board?
Sure. Hey, Deanie, I've had a couple of issues where I've uploaded a document that's just too large, so it creates an error, like printing out a book. But if I was to put that, say, in a Google Doc and use the MCP, would that solve the problem, or is that what's
Yeah, I think if you're having issues in our app where it's too long for the input that you're putting in, that's likely to translate over to our API as well, because underneath we use the sort of same powerful engine that we've built. And so unfortunately, we live in a world where all of these AI models have input context limits. They can only take a certain amount in a go. So the easiest workaround that I can immediately think of is unfortunately having to split up your content. I know it's not the best answer, but it's what we're working with today.
okay? No, that's great. Appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you, John. Any other questions? I see a question, John, about getting the text from the demo, being the format and the syntax can be maybe a problem in some case. I'm not sure what text exactly, if it's from the Gamma documentation or something else, if you want to clarify. But any other questions? Again, we've got the Gamma team right here for another 10 minutes on this session, this segment of the summit today. So speak up now if you're here with us live. And of course, if you're watching the recording here on YouTube, drop them in the comments and we'll do our best to relay those questions as they come. Tylen Miller.
Yeah, I have a couple things already created that some people have asked. I came late to the Zoom, but I've been in the Slack. I guess my one real question that I have right now is like later on, I have an N8N integration already for Gamma. And I was gonna post it there because I know the N8N team, but I'm happy to later give the code to the Gamma team if they want to have the code to release that in N8N a bit later.
Yeah, I think that's really kind. If you want to message me in Slack or maybe send an email, we can certainly talk more about it. That's really kind. Thank you, Tylen.
Yeah, I've put some stuff. I don't remember his name talking to like your dev API guy. I've already talked to him about some stuff. Like an API I've been building for 16 years. Been waiting on Gamma to have an API for a while. It's late, a couple months late, so you guys doing the beta, but like I already have an MCP, I have an N8N integration, and I have actually a white label around Gamma for like people to do some of these things that they're saying. And I know some companies like they care, sometimes they don't care and stuff. Or I don't know, once again, like if you guys don't want to do double work, I could just give you guys the code and it could just be under you guys and it could just be there and stuff.
Really appreciate it.
Yeah.
Cool. Any other questions, guys? Comments or any insights from today on what is possible with Gamma in the API? Again, just about a week from this being like officially announced and launched. A lot of people are still figuring out where it fits and what they can do with it in their workflow. Love to hear if there are any aha moments that came out of this or ways that you're planning on going and implementing right away.
I actually do have one more question. My biggest actually concern is when you guys think you're going to ramp up that API usage per day from 50. I know you guys have said there's going to be like already planning the talks around it. And I think I saw something around there might be like a way to refresh that. I don't know if it was just the credits in general, or I might be getting confused with if you run out of 50 generations through the API, you could refresh that. But that's really more what my concern is on. I can imagine a lot of us are doing 50 generations a day ourselves, or even one client is doing 50 generations. So what do you guys look like that on an actual ETA?
Yeah, love to hear it. We want people to use our API as much as possible. We're working on doing it very soon. I would say, I don't have an exact date right now, but a couple of weeks to maybe a month at the most, but maybe even sooner. But you will certainly know. So just another heads up is like when we make changes to our API, which we're doing when we're iterating fast and we're adding more features to it, there's two sort of things we try to do. One is obviously we update our documentation. We send out an email to anybody who's ever created an API key, and we also update in our Slack. So if you're part of one of those groups, you will get communication from us, but I highly recommend being part of the Slack because that's where we'll give us updates about rate limit increases and any other sort of relevant changes.
I got it. Thank you.
And of course, for those that aren't using Gamma, head on over to gamma.app to get started. And the API, like you said, was available for the pro plans and above.
Correct.
Obviously, you can get started on the initial plans, get started for free, test the waters out with Gamma if you're just getting going. And then as you get more used to Gamma, more comfortable with it, and want to start scaling out your automations, then I'd recommend upgrading to Pro at the very least so that you get access to some more of those tools and joining the community. Like you're saying, Gamma is super active in Slack. There's a ton of Game ambassadors on this call in that community that are sharing really powerful use cases, questions, roadmap, all the things inside the Game ambassador Slack community. So thank you so much, Dini. This has been super insightful and super excited about where Gamma is heading, where the API is. I know you guys also released agents. You also released Studio. Make sure y'all are also subscribed to us here at GenAI University on YouTube and check out our other videos that we've done with Amanda and the team at Gamma for websites, presentations, social media content, and of course, much more as we continue to create and innovate with Gamma.
Thanks, everyone.